Okay, friends, Dave Paulides, Canada Missing Project, a copyrighted edition of our video channel, and we are on Huck TV. Yeah, shake, shake. Okay, just one more. Good girl. Yeah, you good girl. See if we can get through a production today without Huck interfering. Yes, a good girl. I know you want to play, huh? Yeah, you want to play. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's a good girl. Okay, so we're going to, it's a good girl. Yeah, yeah. Okay, you made your appearance. You can leave if you want. You can go. It's okay. It's okay. So, this is a missing persons segment. And I've got some really, really unusual cases for you today out of one location in Maine. And the Maine cases are very strange. I swear this dog knows when I'm talking, and she can just take her time and come in and harass me. Okay, so I've got some pretty good letters for you today too. So I hope you're doing well. Talk to you about something that I read that really bothered me. Out of Florida, a young girl that was going into her senior year in high school was being bullied and harassed online by some girls on her hockey team. I saw an interview with her parents, and they thought that they had it under control because they had taken away her phone and she had agreed not to look at it. And these are some friends of hers that she'd had for a long time. And knowing a little bit about girls hockey, because I coached it at the highest levels for several years, the girls I always coached were really tight as a team. What happened here is these girls verbally attacked her, threatened her, demeaned her, and she took her own life. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And then supposedly one of the girls that had attacked her verbally and demeaned her and ruined her online came to her funeral. So, let me say something. If you're in high school and you're watching this, in 10 years, high school life won't mean anything to you. Once you're away from these people, and you realize how meaningless some of these relationships really are, and you get away and you stand on your own 2 feet and you know the person you are, you'll be a much happier person. High school can be really rough. I was very lucky. High school was really good to me. I had good friends, and I developed some moral background that carried me in life, but it can be really rough, and I understand that. But I saw those parents interviewed, and I know exactly how they're feeling right now. Very sad. Very sad. Okay, on to the letters. Hey Dave, I have a crazy theory about what might be going on with the missing 411. Call me crazy if you wish, but it's food for thought, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. First, so you know, I've followed your work for a number of years. I've watched all your YouTube videos and movies and have some of the books. I pay close attention and have a theory that makes sense as much as anything can make sense with this phenomena. Think about the types of people who go missing. They are typically super intelligent, in great shape, etc. Even the elderly are in good shape for their ages and smart. Children are good candidates because they can be groomed and molded as desired. You and I know people just don't vanish into thin air, never to be found. Rarely, if ever, is clothing, phones, backpacks, bones, and other personal items found. This doesn't make logical sense, unless I believe most of these people are being taken off planet and used in either the secret space program or for the benefit of other ETs. I'm sure I don't have to tell you that there is a greater ET presence here on Earth and throughout the universe than any other average informed individual can imagine. Why Earthlings when there are tons of other civilized planets to pluck from? Think about the reptilians. They might be smart, but they don't have any one thing humans have, which is opposable thumbs. It makes sense. Anyway, I just thought I'd run this by you and get your opinion. Secret space program. Let me tell you a story. I was at a conference, and an individual that is closely aligned with the secret space program was sitting next to Angie and I for the entire day. Got to know this guy really well. And I knew and I'd read a little bit about his allegations that he supposedly was part of the space program, went away for a number of years, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, I'm sure that there's some people that don't believe you even went. And he goes, oh yeah, Dave, that's the biggest obstacle I have, is trying to prove I went. I says, I think we can prove it. Or at least come pretty close. And he goes, how's that? I said, well, I'm a licensed private investigator. I know a lot about what's available. And if I work with you and you sign an agreement that I can have access to your Social Security account, you tell me the years that you were at that secret space program and I'll look at your Social Security account. And if you had 10 years of payments into Social Security by different businesses and things, and then all of a sudden it stopped and there was nothing submitted for those years that you were on the program, that'll go a long way to showing that you were doing something really odd. And he goes, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. Would you do that? Oh, yeah. So I got home that following week and I emailed the guy and I said, yeah, I'm willing to work with you. Didn't hear anything. A month later, I sent him another email. Never heard anything. 2 weeks later, I sent him another email. Nothing. You know what it told me? It told me he didn't want me to do that. But why? Why wouldn't he want me to do that if that could have proved or helped prove that he was doing something highly unusual? Well, what happened if I ran the Social Security of his and it showed he was working, let's just say, at Walmart for those 2 years? Right? Yeah, exactly. So, I'm not saying it's not true. I'm not saying it is true. I'm just saying that you have to make me a believer. You got to lay down the facts for me. And if I give you a rational trail to follow to get to those facts and you say no, then I'm going to walk away. And I did. Okay. The rest of the note I really don't have an opinion about. So this one is an incident from Australia. Good day, Dave. Good day. I'm writing you to share an experience I had in April of 2018. I live in Adelaide, South Australia. A group of friends and I went on a little getaway to a beachside town in Victor Harbour, 80 kilometers south of Adelaide. We explored the area by car and on foot for most of the day. We walked along a small section of a road near a popular lookout called The Bluff. The windy little road led to a dead end with a tiny car parked facing the ocean. After having a good day with friends, everyone retired to bed except for me. I pondered about what to do whilst everyone else was sleeping and decided a walk might help me feel sleepy. Around 1 a.m., I ventured through the quiet streets to a park bench along the beach. Since the town is mostly populated by elderly people, I didn't see a soul along my walk. I sat at the bench for a while, watching the ocean roll in. That's peaceful. I like that. To my right, I could see the bluff and the little windy road at a distance of about 300 meters. For you North American types, that's about 300 yards. There or abouts. I spot two bright white headlights heading down the windy road towards the small parked car. I had a little chuckle to myself, thinking that a couple were looking for somewhere secluded to make out. As the headlights approached the car, they slowed to a stop. What happened next blew my mind and changed my worldview. The two headlights split apart and rose into the sky at about 20 meters from the ground. My mouth was in shock and ajar, and I realized that I was actually witnessing something unusual. Both lights zipped around a short distance above the water before meeting close together at the car park. The lights then started rising slowly into the sky while circling each other in the same sort of shape as a double helix. Both lights came together and seemingly rejoined. In an instant, both lights shot vertically into the sky at a speed I've never before witnessed. In under a second, they had disappeared from view. Despite feeling shocked and a little afraid, it was a beautiful sight to see these lights dance in the sky. I sat for a minute trying to gather myself after seeing such a phenomenon. Suddenly, a strange growl or roar fills the air. It was quite loud and unexpected. It was quite low and deep, but at the same time was quite high-pitched too. I'd never heard anything like it in real life or on the internet. The growl sent a shiver down my spine. I glanced around the area frantically to see what could have made this awful noise. There was nothing, no movement anywhere. Along the beach there were little shrubs. They might have been as tall as 30 centimeters, not tall enough to conceal whatever made the sound. Ring-tailed possums can make quite a scary noise, but I've heard their screeching many times, and I knew it wasn't that. Koalas also can make some deep growls and grunts, but that wasn't it. I was scared for my safety, so I ran as fast as I could back to the holiday park. I got in, locked the door, and processed the events I just witnessed. This experience has solidified my belief that we are visited by beings not from this planet or possibly dimension. You actually reminded me of this experience with your mentions of a strange event sometimes be associated with granite. Strangely enough, looking to the left from the park bench, lays your eyes on Granite Island. Granite Island is a small island connected to the mainland by a short bridge. I'm unsure if there's any connection at all, just interested that it happened right near a large deposit of granite and water. Thank you, Dave, for taking the time to read this. I hope it maybe help you in your research. Keep up the great truth search. Thank you. Well, thank you. Yeah, granite. I always tell people that you got to do your own research on some of these things before it'll soak in how real this issue is and how meaningful these profile points are. Look up granite and look up unusual qualities of granite. Do it. Now, before I go too much further into reading more letters, our movie out December 12th, Missing 411, the UFO Connection. Friends, it was a monumental task. I can't believe we're done, and we got it done. And I'm proud of it. It's very unusual. People say, oh, he's finally saying it's aliens. Some people just want to read whatever they can into anything. You see alien anything up there? So, anyhow, the poster, I wish I could say I made that poster, but no. The same guy who did the other two posters of my first two movies did this one. His name is Scott. Scott did a phenomenal job. And there's an incident in the movie that this scene is from. And it's very realistic to what is described in the scene. So, Scott, thank you for doing a great job for us. The movie is going to be available in DVD and Blu-ray, and we'll sell it through our site, and that'll go up on pre-sale in the middle of November. The movie itself is going to go up on pre-sale pretty soon if you want to buy it for online viewing and keep it for yourself permanently. What else can I tell you about it? I don't know. That's enough. But you can still watch our first two movies for free online, and the links are on the pinned comment of this video. It's part of the gift I give out to the viewers and subscribers who watch me. You can go and find it easy. And last thing, before I get back to the letters, do not purchase our books from Amazon, eBay, etc. You're going to get ripped off. They're charging $100, $150 a piece for our books that on our website, you can get them for $24.99. Our website, NA, like North America, nabigfootsearch.com. Just go down to the online store, and you'll find all of our books in there. On to the letters. Hey Dave, my name is blank and I live in northeast of England. I'm currently a professor of finance at a university. And I have a doctorate in finance. I worked for many years in the corporate and the government sector, mostly in programming and heavy data analytics roles. Only recently I've moved to academia. I've seen your episode Missing in Alaska segment, the special, the video, and was rather inspired by people's letters. Also, I wanted to congratulate you on the work you're doing. It requires a lot of dedication. I've only shared this story with a handful of people, as we all know how people react to a UFO sighting. Moreover, I cannot allow myself to be seen as the guy who sees UFOs due to the nature of my work. Approximately the summer of 2012-2013, I walked out into the backyard of our house with my brother, who was at the time a police officer, and our dad to enjoy the sunshine and a quick chat. The sky was cloudless, optimistically blue, and the time was around 2 to 3 p.m., a perfect day. The moment our dad was walking into the house, we noticed a large black disc in the sky. It was traveling at a height of about a third or fourth floor in a building, which is pretty low. We were both shouting to our father to come out and see it, but he wouldn't dare to walk out, as if he couldn't or as if something was stopping him from doing it. The disc flew directly above our house. The diameter of this perfect disc was approximately 15 to 20 meters. The color was black. It wasn't reflective or shining, nor was it a matte. The weird thing about that was it made no sound and there was no visible propulsion anywhere. There was an orange glow around it, like a neon light, although it was separated from the disc and simply surrounded it. One of the weirdest things was that you could not see the source of the light. It has been traveling at the speed or around 40 miles per hour, and after a good few seconds disappeared behind the trees. We have been asking neighbors and checking with the news, but nothing was recorded. In a city of 300,000 people, no one has seen it. To be fair, we live in the north end of the city center, but still a heavily populated residential area. We have never reported it because it really couldn't go anywhere and instead put a negative spotlight on us. National UFO Reporting Center. National UFO Reporting Center, New Fork. It's run by my friend Peter. It's out of Seattle, Washington. They take reports from all over the world. Please report it because it is important. Only last year in July, I recorded 2 balls of light traveling at an extreme speed, which is obvious in the video. Again, in the area of our house, although at a significant distance from it, there is no doubt in my mind that we as humans do not possess this kind of technology, as I follow tech advancements closely. Thank you. I've said this before. People who I've gone to hear their talks about, military people, retired colonels that were in the Air Force, and they all say that our government has technology that's 50 years in advance of what we know as citizens they have. That's how advanced it can be. So, I don't know. I don't know if this person saw something that was of advanced technology. Can't say. But thanks for the sighting. Appreciate it. Next one. Dave, thank you for all you do. I want to share this sighting with you as I hear you mention Lake Superior quite often. Yes, you do. Lake Superior is a very unusual place. I live on the shore of the big lake and spend a good deal of my time shooting photos around the area. I have a deep interest in UFOs and always keep an eye on the sky in the hopes of catching something. In September of 2018, I happened to see a bright light over the lake, moving quickly, coming to a dead stop, moving again, etc. Extremely bright at times, then dimming down, then bright again. I saw it for a few minutes. Then it went dim and disappeared. It seemed to be quite a ways out. I had a 400 millimeter lens on a Canon 7D. I was able to get 2 shots. I thought you might find them interesting. Take care. Give Huck a hug from me. P.S. The music you used in Missing 411 The Hunted was outstanding, as was the whole film. Thank you. That's an expensive part of a production, getting the theme, the music just right. We use in every one of my movies, I've used a man named Justin Hosford, Hosford. Justin is really good at his job, really good. But anyhow, this guy sent me the pictures he took. This is the first one he took. You can see it's kind of a strange glow. Not really much you can tell about that, but it's a good picture. Then the second one he sent, this one's a little more odd. Don't know quite what to make of this one. It almost looks like a planet, but it's got some strange texture to it that I haven't usually seen on UFOs. But thanks for sending in the pictures. I greatly appreciate it, and I'm sure the village appreciates it as well. So I talked about Newfork National UFO Reporting Center. Take UFO reports from all over the world. You can do it online. You can actually call them, and Peter answers the phone. He's a great, great man. And of course, MUFON will take your reports. Both those locations, you don't have to give your name, and they're into research, so it helps. Hey Dave, I'm writing from the UK, and would just like to say that as much as I'm angered by the impact the current U.S. administration has on my country and the world in general, with the pandemic, etc., the empowerment of China and being brought to World War III, I would like to express my sincere sympathies with you and other Americans who find themselves at the mercy of this administration and ground zero. Having your country robbed of you under your feet must be unbelievably infuriating. I wrote before regarding a theory about coding concealed within human DNA and the reason for these abductions. Did you catch that segment? I wrote before regarding a theory about coding concealed within human DNA and the reason for these abductions. But I wanted to write again regarding the more unusual entities and beings that you've mentioned being sighted by a few people. Beings that appear at random and infrequently and disappear just as quickly, such as tiny humanoids. Giant mantis creatures and weird robotic beings. Their motives and purpose seem to me to be a mystery and impossible to define due to the lack of data and insight. The parallel I wish to draw occurred to me while snorkeling on holiday. It's a weird time for something to come to you. I love snorkeling. I've been a scuba diver since I was 12, so I feel as comfortable in the water as I am out of the water. So every time I could go to a tropical place, I'm in. Snorkel, have fun. The parallel I wish to draw occurred to me while snorkeling on holiday. Consider the fish. They live in a completely different and separate environment and element from ourselves, and their physical shape and genetics are vastly different from us. They likely have little concept of our environment and less concept of what beings exist there and how we live and conduct our lives. In fact, the only perception they have of our dimension is likely just a blank blue sky above them, like space, divided from their environment by a barrier uncrossable because of their physical limitations and mental capacity. They probably have little to zero concept of our environment at all, and little concern for our dimensions way of life in this different air-based element, as their time is largely taken up with feeding, breeding, survival, and fishy concerns. And yet, from time to time, superior beings such as ourselves who have surpassed the restrictions of this watery barrier are able to don special equipment and visit the fish's element for an hour or two at a time simply for the purpose of observing the creatures that live in that element out of curiosity or scientific research. The visitations by ourselves must seem as alien and frightening to these fish as these odd creatures you describe being sighted that appear completely alien to human experience and completely out of place for our world. How alien and completely out of their experience we must seem to fish, and any attempt to relay what they have seen, if they could, would likely be met with skepticism by their fishy friends. Something for you. When I was a policeman, when I was married, we went to the Turks and Caicos Islands. Went to a Club Med there for a week. And I picked that club because they had some of the best scuba diving in the world. And the first day out, the dive master, there's like 20 people on the boat. I didn't know anybody. My wife didn't dive at the time, so I went out alone. Dive master said, "Hey, I hope you guys are comfortable with diving with large mammals." We go, "What do you mean?" "Well, we've got porpoise and dolphin here that dive with us all the time, and there's one named Jojo that will come and swim right next to you." I thought, "Oh wow, this is going to be cool." And he said, "Don't don't reach out and touch it. They've got big teeth, but he's never bit anybody. And he's just very inquisitive. I said, all right. Make a long story short, about halfway out to the dive site, this thing starts jumping out of the water, doing somersaults in behind the engine. And when we stop, it's swimming around the boat like a shark. There were some people on the boat really afraid. I wasn't afraid at all. So me and this guy, and I picked a guy who was super experienced so he wouldn't suck his air real quick and I'd have to come up fast. So we jump in, and right away, JoJo is right between us, diving like a buddy. And a couple of times I always like to go up to big coral patterns and look around for eels and things, and we found this snowflake eel. It was pretty big size. And it was like JoJo kept trying to push us away from it. I kind of held my ground. I said, I said, it's okay. I just wanted to watch. But I dove, I think, 6 days that week. And 3 out of those 6 days, JoJo went with us. It was one of the most unbelievable experiences of my life because it was a completely wild creature. And it was super smart. Super smart. What is important to take away from this premise is that the only thing blocking the acknowledgement of humans' existence in the environment/dimension is the fish's own limits in mental ability to conceive of it and their ignorance to it. Thus the parallel in these beings that some of us cite, often in areas of natural beauty and places rich in earthly wonders, like national parks, that we just cannot comprehend as we currently do not have the conceptual apparatus to determine their origin or the mechanics behind their existence. Sometimes us superior beings, now I'm not saying we're superior, not saying it's superior, often manipulate and even cultivate the fish's environment to coax them to act in certain ways or to gather in certain places. We also extract some fish from their element. The attractive or strong ones, the colorful ones that interest us or exhibit interesting behavior, and we transport them in tanks to observe closer or to keep as pets. How traumatizing this must seem to the fish. May even compel the animal to blanket totally from its limited mind, or in some cases die from the stress. I believe that. Some other times we may grow bored with these fish playthings and carelessly throw them back into their element, roughly where we got them from in the first place, sometimes to perish from the experience, or you'd imagine to erase any memory of the trauma they experienced. Again, the parallel to your missing persons cases are clear. This theory may have been put to you before. I don't know. I'm sorry, but I think it is a good illustration of what might be going on. If there is some truth to this parallel, I think extremely wise to consider that what is most ignorant to us, that is most short-sighted and makes us inferior beings, has to be this obsession with money and profits and power that seem to be driving and motivating all the wicked and destructive events in human existence. That is driving us all to self-annihilation. How ironic that those people in power who claim to be smart and have mankind's best interests at heart appear to be the very worst of us, hopelessly corrupted and pursuing a fruitless and meaningless objective with their own selfish ends. Sorry, I got a bit off there. Looking forward to the new film and love the new videos on Bigfoot. I know a lot of people are scared about where we're going, but I'm not going to get into that here. I will say this. I've been to a lot of UFO conferences, and I've heard a lot of researchers say, when we're at that point as a civilization where we're on the brink of self-annihilation, wouldn't it be awesome if like 10,000 craft just came down from the heavens and landed on our lawns, landed on the White House, and just shut down every nuclear missile on the planet? Wouldn't that be awesome? Now, the Disclosure Project talked about that exact same thing happening at nuclear sites. UFOs hovered above them, shut down the ability to even activate, essentially just turned the switch off for a period of time. This was reported by many, many people who were in charge of those facilities. I think it'd be great if it happened. Dave, my name is Logan. How you doing, Logan? I've been following your work for what feels like 10 years now. As a member of the village, I want to take a second to thank you as always sharing your wealth of knowledge, compassion, and truly being a role model to your villagers and providing guidance to men like myself that never had the opportunity to know what having a father figure in their life is like. You are a father figure to us all. And I'm sure Ben was truly proud of you. I'd like to share with you some of my past experiences with high strangeness. 15 years ago, in Tampa, Florida at night, I witnessed a purple ball of light falling to the earth. The first thoughts in my head were, it couldn't be a firework or some sort of celebrational blast of light because it appears to be coming from outside of our atmosphere without any sound. Then in the year 2020, I witnessed almost the exact same thing again, but it was green. I always acknowledge the possibility of it being a celebratory firework, but in my brain it just does not register as fireworks, but due to the distance that it travels down and its unique glowing color and lack of sound. Then in the year 2021, me and my mom were sitting on a beach outside of our hotel in St. Pete, Florida, talking late at night, watching the sky. My mother says, "Is that a UFO?" I followed her to where her finger is pointing, and to my surprise, I see a ball of light that appears to look just like all the other stars in the sky. The only difference is this ball of light is zigzagging in between all the other stars perfectly without touching or overlapping them. To my amazement, I tell my mom, "I believe you just spotted a UFO." In the past 2 years, Dave, I've watched Joe Rogan mention your work a handful of times. One time being just recently, he pretended as if he did not know your work existed. This is strange because I've heard him mention it a few times before. So let me explain something. Rogan knows my work. He lived in Southern California, in a city where they had the best Ayurvedic restaurant on earth. And it was owned by a man that used to be the chef for the Beatles. And Ben was friends with this guy. And every time I was down there, we'd drive down to the restaurant and this man would sit down and we'd have the best conversations. It was a phenomenal spot. Well, this man said, "Oh yeah, Rogan's in here all the time with his daughter." He goes next door and eats at the Mexican restaurant, and his daughter comes in here and eats. And he had really nice things to say about the wife and the daughter. And he goes, "I don't know Rogan very well, but he won't eat my food." And make a long story short, my first movie I made, the distributors knew the producer for Rogan's show, so they sent him a private video link to watch. And that link was watched 10 times by his production staff. I never got a call to be on the show. Second show, Missing 411 The Hunted, private link sent to Joe, Joe's producer. It was watched like 15 times. So if his producers are watching the show, then they're for sure talking to him about, hey, let's have Paulides on or do this and that. And kind of the consensus is that my work is a topic Joe really doesn't want to talk about. Probably makes him feel uncomfortable, and here's why. Because Joe's a hunter, and he goes alone into the woods. And to think that something's going on in the woods that he can't control, and he's not the alpha male out there, may make him a bit uncomfortable. Now, Joe's a really smart guy, and my work is complicated. If you don't really follow it, you don't read the books, it can make you look embarrassingly idiotic quickly. Now, I have no idea why he won't have me on. I'm not going to waste any time about it. Whatever. But I know he has an interest in UFOs, and I know we're going to send him a copy of the UFO Connection. I still don't think he'll ever have me on. Just saying. But when he plays stupid that he doesn't know what I am or who I am, that's ridiculous. Just like this man said, he's talked about me before in prior shows. In the same show, there was a gentleman that was mentioning your work being in alignment with Operation High Jump and the Germans that were in communication with UFOs in Antarctica, and how there is a link between it all. So I'm going to tell you right now, I have no idea. Not the first time I've heard of this linkage. Are you familiar with double split test experiment? Nope. This is an experiment that has been replicated and done dozens of times by different college scientists and quantum physicists for years. In this experiment, when observing particles being shot through... I know what you're talking about now. Yes, I've watched the experiment. The particles would follow the normal laws of physics to go through the slits and appear on the other side. Only at the point at which there is no observer watching will the particles defy the laws of physics and interfere with themselves, creating an interference pattern. The very act of observing or not observing determines whether the particles would act independently, as if the particles are aware of being observed. At the point of no observation is when the particles would defy physics and come in and out of our reality and interfere with themselves in what is known as a superposition. I can't help but make a connection between the point of no observation and the point of separation. Just like in some of your missing cases, it appears like sometimes the person is neither there or not there due to so many times the body is found right where the searchers have been searching dozens of times. Now, when I saw this, here's what I thought. What if there's a highly intelligent entity over that entire science experiment, and they knew that there was a camera on these particles, and when you stepped away, what if that entity had the ability somehow to manipulate the particles going through to make it appear different than when you had your eyes on it? Because to think there's some intelligence behind the particles would be a hard stretch for me to get. Just saying. Thank you for your time, David, and I'd like to end this by quoting something written by Hito Sturerl, titled Missing People, Entanglement, Superposition, Exhumation as Sites of Indeterminacy. I don't know. I'm not that smart. I can't read that. According to common logic, a missing person is either dead or alive. But is she really? Doesn't this only apply at the moment when we find out what happened to her? When she turns up or when her remains are identified? But what, then, is the state of missing itself? Does it take place inside Schrodinger's box, so to speak? Is it being both dead and alive? How can we understand its conflicting desires to want and to dread the truth at the same time? The urge to both move on and keep hope alive. Perhaps the state of missing speaks of a paradoxical superposition that cannot be understood with the conceptual tools of Euclidean physics, human biology, and logic. Perhaps it reaches out to an impossible coexistence of life and death. Both are materially interlaced in limbo as long as no observer opens the box of interdimension, which is in so many cases a grave. Yeah. Couple things. I know some of you, we'll leave religion out of this for a second. When we die, is that the end? That's it. We're done. There's no soul that leaves the body. There's no spirit that leaves the body. That's it. I know some people believe that. Other people believe that we need the soul to survive. When the body dies, the soul leaves the body and goes on and gets placed again in another body, in another soul, in another body, physical body, as something else. And then some people believe that when we die and that soul moves on, that soul loses that memory and starts fresh in another physical body. Some pretty heavy thoughts. And when you think about all of the options that come into play, a lot of people who have studied my work say, well, when the coroners can't determine a cause of death, it's because your soul has been taken and you need a soul to survive. That is one thing that I truly wish science would study. The soul. And do we need a soul to survive? That would be an interesting study. So, I told you this is a special about Maine. And the first story hit me hard when I wrote it. Missing 411 Law was the book. And it's a story about two brothers, Robbie and Timmy Mott. Robbie was 17, Timmy was 3. And they were at Baxter State Park in Maine, July 1965. And Father George Mott was a physicist for Xerox in Rochester, New York, considered a brilliant man. He was married, he had 4 kids, another son Greg, 10, and Martha, 15, and then Bobby and Tim. They lived 3 miles from Lake Ontario. I've said before that I do think that some of the disappearances are related to where the people were born. And years down the line, I think I'm going to find that this is true. So they decided to go to Baxter State Park for the week, and they pulled their trailer into camp. They love to camp. They've done this a bunch of times. And they were going to vacation at that Mount Cottondon and in that Roaring Brook campground at Baxter State Park. Well, on July 29th, they arrived in camp. On the 30th, Mr. and Mrs. Mott and the 2 older kids decided, well, the 2 older kids, I should preface that, Greg and Martha, went with them and they were going to climb the mountain. And they left the 2 younger kids behind. Well, 2 younger kids. They left behind Robbie and Timmy, 17 years and 3 years. And when I first read this, I thought, well, okay, that's reasonable, 17-year-old. Yeah. Well, they arrived back in camp at about 6 p.m. that night, and the boys were gone. Well, they looked around for an hour, they went to the camp host, and then they eventually contacted the Maine Warden Service and the State Park Rangers for Maine. They, in turn, immediately called the National Guard, the Civil Air Patrol, Naval Air Station Brunswick, and the Topsham Air Force Base. A huge response. And it took a couple of days, but Xerox, after about 5 days, heard about the disappearance, and they got the corporate jet, and 72 employees from Xerox got on that corporate jet, flew in, they got buses, and bussed the people to the park to search. Now, the search took on special urgency when Mrs. Mott told the head of the search and rescue that Robby was severely diabetic and, at the time, they used the word retarded. Even though he was 17, he thought between the ages of 7 and a 10-year-old. Now, stop. I immediately thought, well, if he thought of between the ages of 7 and 10, I don't know if I'd be leaving him in charge of a 3-year-old alone in a foreign campsite. Just saying. And I don't like to second-guess parents, but I know what you'd be thinking. Well, the Maine Warden Service started up the search and rescue on a 4-square-mile area. And right away, the report stated that it rained and that slowed searchers, and then it got foggy, which meant that the helicopters couldn't go up. Well, after about 4 or 5 days, the area around the campsite and in that park was described as a war zone, because you had all these different facets of the military, helicopters, vehicles, all-terrain type cars, jeeps, just combing everywhere. On August 6th, 200 searchers had covered the previous 2 days 6 square miles and found nothing. The deputy chief of the wardens that was on scene, a guy named Jack Shaw, made the statement that he was absolutely baffled that they haven't found any evidence of the boys. And they destroyed beaver dams of local creeks and dams. They drug the waterways. They actually walked the waterways, the creeks, the small rivers. They weren't finding any tracks. They weren't finding any feces. The 6 canine teams that were on scene were not hitting on any scent. It was all completely baffling. On August 8th, the helicopter assigned to their search had engine issues and was grounded. I found that fascinating because I've written before how many times aircraft associated with these disappearances crash or are grounded because of engine or mechanical issues. Just saying, just report the facts. And again, on the 8th of August, the search and rescue commander came out again and said, I'm stymied. I can't figure out why we're not finding anything. And then people started to talk about abduction. Because Mr. Mott said there was no way the boys would leave the site. He didn't think they'd get out of the trailer, but he said there's no way they'd leave the site. So the next day, the helicopter pilots go up again. And one pilot had 17 years of military experience, and he said, I could spot a pen on the ground. That's how small of an item I can see. If there were boys out there, I'd find them. They didn't find anything. August 9th, the 10th day of the search. They were going to search until 5 p.m. At 4 p.m. that day, 2 Xerox employees are making their final spin around, and they're coming back to the camp. They're a 13-minute walk from the command post, 2 miles from the original campsite, and they find the boys dead. Searchers commented it is hard to understand how everyone overlooked these boys because they were on top of a knoll, easily seen by helicopters. The coroner stated that the boys died of exposure 3 to 5 days after going missing. And they said they didn't know which boy died first. 3 to 5 days. That means that search was underway for at least 2/3 of the time that these boys were alive. Now, Robby is found lying on his left side looking at Timmy. Robby was fully dressed. Timmy was missing his shoes. And the shoes were never found, which is very odd. The bodies are found by Xerox employees making a final sweep, and they're not found by the formal search and rescue people. Very odd. Why didn't the multiple canine teams find Tim's shoes? Those are just like radiation points for scent. So the boys were dead 5 to 6 days, alive 3 to 4 days during the search and rescue. 100 campers are in the area camping. 400 ground searchers from the military and game warden service were in that area when the boys were alive. A 13-minute walk from the command post and all the helicopters. Why didn't the boys respond to the helicopters and all the noise and all the people calling their names? Why didn't the helicopters see the boys on top of the knoll? Boys that age, when they get hungry, they have to eat. Why didn't they come out and step up to the searchers that were all over that area? Important point, folks. Important point. The boys did not die from starving. The coroner never stated what they found in their stomach. I'd like to know. They died of exposure in the middle of July in Maine. Now, it did rain while they were out there, so I can understand hypothermia happening, but I don't understand why they weren't found or why they didn't search out searchers. Now, some things. The Motts were very religious people. And on one of the trips that the Xerox plane came out, They flew in Dr. Carlton Allen, and he was a pastor for the Motts. And he came out and he prayed with them, and it was after he came out that the boys were found. Just saying the facts. So let's think about this. There's water all over this area. All over. This is Baxter State Park. This is Canada over on this side of the line. This is Maine. There's water everywhere in here. This is Mount Cattenin, Baxter State Park, a pretty remote area of Maine. It's the best photos I could find of the boys. Timmy, the young one, Robby, the older one, but had a disability and was diabetic. So let's think about this. Water everywhere. Boys are found in an area previously searched. One boy has a severe disability or multiple disabilities. Canines, multiple canine teams can't pick up a scent. They should have been able to pick up the scent at the search and rescue headquarters. Weather was an issue. Point of separation. When the parents left, something happened. And lastly, folks, and this is a big one, and until you're in the business, you really don't understand this. To find two bodies together, I can think of only two other times in 600 years of searching that I've ever found that to be true and happen. And neither time made any sense. People do not die simultaneously or in close time frame to each other. Everyone dies at a different rate. And to find two bodies together is very odd. Very odd. So what happened here? Too many things are happening in this incident to say, oh, 400 people missed him? 6 different canine teams missed him? 6 different helicopters didn't see him on the top of that knoll? See what I'm saying? That's why I'm talking to you about this case. The next case. Next case is in the exact same park. Yeah. A man named Augustus Aldrich, 86 years old, went missing July 5th, 1974. Same month as Robbie and Timmy. Same park, Baxter State Park, Maine. Now, Augustus was 5 feet tall, weighed 104 pounds. When he was very young, he was adopted, and his family had an apple orchard in Vermont. And Augustus just stayed with that farm his entire life and grew apples. At the time, on July 5th, 1974, he was 86 years old. And everybody in every story I read said he could walk anybody into the ground. He was in that good a shape. He sold the farm 2 years earlier in 72, and he wanted to enjoy the good life, as I can understand. So, on July 4th, he traveled with his 50-year-old friend, a woman named Rachel Charland, and they drove up to Baxter State Park for a long weekend of hiking and sightseeing. They parked their car at a place called Roaring Brook in Baxter State Park. And then they hiked 3.3 miles and upwards of 1,400 feet to get to an area of where they wanted to kind of spend their week moving out from. Well, Augustus told Rachel after they got to this point that he wanted to climb the mountain and get to Baxter Peak. He asked Rachel if she'd like to go, and she said she was too tired, and she said, no, you go. Well, the next morning he leaves, and he takes off, and he's seen on the trail at 7:30. He left real early. He's seen at 7:30 by some other people. He talks to him, and in fact, somebody actually took his picture. Well, before you leave to summit the mountain, you're supposed to register on these paper ledgers, but I would say 90% of people don't, and he didn't, which was no big deal. But they figured out that he went through an area called Blueberry Knoll, Hamlin Ridge, Baxter, and made it to Baxter Peak and the Saddle Trail. Highest peak in there is about 5,257 feet, and it's the northern point of the Appalachian Trail. Searchers believed that there were probably hundreds of people on the trail that 4th of July weekend. Now, late on July 5th, Augustus hadn't returned, and Rachel called the warden's service. They came out and interviewed her, and she said, you know what? One thing, you're going to underestimate Augustus. He is the most studly 86-year-old man you ever met. And true to form, he kind of had notoriety in Vermont as being an environmentalist and outdoorsman. Well, his friends in Vermont heard that he was missing, and they came to the park en masse. And they wanted to find out what happened to their buddy. One of his friends was searching for him on July 9th and had a heart attack outside of Chimney Pond, the location where Rachel and Augustus were staying. Had a heart attack and died. And that really put a damper on the entire search. But they had 80 searchers on the ground. They had canines, National Guard helicopter. They gave it a 14-day search. They found nothing. Well, how can that be? Where can an 86-year-old man go? Well, one of Augustus's friends wrote an interesting piece about Augustus. And it said he's a cross, this is the quote, he's a cross between the king of leprechauns and Peter Pan. This 104-pound bundle of rawhide and granite will walk your legs off to your beltline before breakfast. A year later, there was an article about Augustus and the search, and how thousands of people had walked that Appalachian Trail ending at the park. Thousands of people have climbed the mountains, hunters, etc. And not one person ever found anything relating to Augustus Aldrich, 86 years old. Two parks, the same park, 9 years apart. The boys disappeared July 30th, 1965. Augustus disappeared July 5th, 1974. And there are more cases in this park. It's a weird place. To not find Augustus, to me, is absolutely baffling. To not find the boys before they died is absolutely baffling. And remember, I've talked about this in Missing 411, A Sobering Coincidence, that secondary autopsies found high levels of GHB in the bodies of these young men. And GHB will make you feel like you're comatose and you can't move. And if I lay you in an environment that's very cold and you can't move and protect yourself and keep warm, you're going to die of exposure. If I put you in a lake or in a creek and you can't move, you're going to die by drowning. And until all of the coroners in the United States start making GHB one of the normal drugs and narcotics that are tested for on these people, we're not going to make any headway on this. I was asked to speak at a coroner's conference many years ago by a coroner, and the conference wouldn't let me talk. And this coroner said, Dave, you need to say your piece, and these people need to hear what you have to say. But I wasn't invited, so they never heard. But this is a real issue. I will say this, when I heard of Robbie and Timmy disappearing, and I heard that their dad was a physicist, my ears immediately perked up. I don't know if that is a connection, but I will say this, that it was odd. So anyhow, I'm humbled that you're here. I appreciate everybody paying attention to what I have to say, and and following me. If you could post this on your social media, it'll help us. If you could talk to people and explain to them, hey, don't hike alone, like Augustus did. Don't go anywhere alone. He even told Rachel exactly where he was going, and they still couldn't find him. Carry a personal locator beacon all of the time. They're not that expensive. We're coming up on the holidays. Look at Amazon, personal locator beacons. You don't need one that has a monthly subscription. Just get one that is straight activated, sends a note to the satellite that somebody's injured, and they'll come and they'll find you within 10 feet of that signal. They're very, very good. I carry one all the time. Be a great gift, a loving gift. And just so everybody knows, I don't sell them. I have no relationship to them. It's just something I've tried to push the entire time I've been on YouTube. So anyhow, be nice to your family. When you go out today, do something nice for somebody when you're out there. Your goal. Get people to smile and say thank you to you 3 times while you're out today. Just make that your goal. Holding the door open. Helping somebody that's in distress. 3 times. Thanks for being here. Paulides out.